Coming to you from the Oddball Podcast Studios in New York City. My name is Vin Forte, and you're listening to Oddball with Vin Forte. Go follow the show over on social media, on Twitter at Oddball Podcast. Follow the personal account over at Mighty Vin. Follow me over on Instagram at Vin Forte NYC. If you like what you're about to listen to, go subscribe over on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. Wherever you get your podcasts from, you know where to get your podcasts from because you're listening to one right now. And if you're listening to the podcast, why not go subscribe over on YouTube? I'm doing more YouTube videos over the past month. So full episodes as of this past month, now over on YouTube. Got a bunch of episodes up there right now. Might put some old interviews up there as well. So lots of fun stuff over there. Lots of fun stuff happening today. I'm glad you're with us. It's not just me today. Brought a special guest, but I said last week, there's a couple different sort of permutations, variants of this podcast. Most weeks when it's just, business as usual is a big topic that I want to broach. A couple smaller topics and like a cool down segment, something fun. Then there's episodes where we got an interview like a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, when the baseball season started. Had Rob Parker from Fox Sports on. That was really fun. Had Alan Hahn from ESPN in the past. Martenzie Johnson from Anscape. And this week we're doing something very fun that I've talked about wanting to do for a while, which was, I don't get to say this often. I was listening to Shaquille O'Neal the other day. Not Shaquille O'Neal, the analyst. Not, a Shaq interview where he's giving some insight into his basketball career. No, I was listening to Shaq Diesel, baby. The platinum selling rap artist, Shaquille O'Neal. And it got me thinking, is he the only platinum selling artist to come from the sports world? And apparently, yes. I haven't found anyone else. We would have heard of him if he does exist. But that brings up the question, because now when people think back about Shaq's career, especially if you're a little younger, I'm in my early 30s. I guess today is not going to, give away a man's age, but he's a little older than I am. And, both of us in general have seen Shaq's entire career. And, people who are younger maybe only know him from TNT. Maybe they only know, busted up Celtics or Cavs Shaq from the end of his career. And they don't really understand just how big he was, how much of an impact he made when he first came into the league. So much so that he could get a rap career, and it wasn't just like, I guess technically it was a vanity thing, but it wasn't like, someone who wants to do it on the side, and it's just their little pet project. Like, again, we're talking a platinum selling artist. Guy had video games, movies, like, we're going to get into it, but let me bring my guest in right now. Been waiting in the wings. If I can get it on screen here.
There we go, bro.
Kil, how are you, man?
And everything is great, man. Just blessed to be, invited on the show. So just looking forward to chopping it up with you, man.
Yeah, I remember seeing you on Where's Buffy, and then I started listening to your podcast, Department 5B. And the thing that I think goes most, and you're a Philly cheesesteak guy too. You've been doing a lot of Philly cheesesteak videos.
Yes, sir.
And but the thing I maybe consume most of yours, which I'm very upset about, the Mixcloud links have, for whatever reason, they're broken on your website right now.
Yeah, man, it's killing me, man.
But if you're on YouTube right now, you see the link right there on the screen. We'll make beats for food. You don't just make mixes. You pump them out at record speed. This is a labor of love for you.
Yeah. That's why I heard so much when Dat Piff went down, with Mixcloud. I don't know what it is with them. There are times there's a mix, and then it'll be like it can't be played in your country. I think it's like if you have more the same artist more than 3 times in a row. But if I'm making a best of Rakim, I'm going to have, what I mean? So it's frustrating. To this day, I'm still trying to find some place, because I've got over 300 mixtapes.
It's insane.
The links are just dead now, and they're just dead. Like, I literally was depressed dead ass depressed for a minute. So, I'm still looking for a spot to house these joints too.
Yeah, because you're still putting them up, but there's no links to any of them. So I'm just
Yeah, man.
He's just putting up playlists at this point. There's nothing to it.
Yeah, it's frustrating, bro. It's frustrating, man.
And then people talk about, oh, follow this person on social media, follow this person on Twitter. You're a genuinely great follow on Twitter because you get into it all the time with people. You're not afraid to duck any conversation about hip hop.
Nah. I mean, I feel like that's the big part. Like with hip hop being 50, there's really like the old heads and the young boys. You know what I mean? And it's this riff that's there. And I'm like, yo, we got to mend that riff. Like, we can't say we love this culture. And it's like two Sixers fans beefing with each other. It's like, right. Yo, we need to be as unified as possible. So, yeah, I mean, I put together after school programs. I've been doing it for over 20 years. So it's the educator in me. People always like, Kil, you be talking to these boys. But I'm trying to school them. You know, it's never not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that. I just want to kind of pour into them because I understand age plays a huge part in how you view music. You know what I mean? So I just want to try to bridge those gaps. So now I ain't never, like my kids in DC say, duck and wreck, like not wanting to fight. Like, now I ain't never ducking no wreck. If you a real artist, if you just somebody with 4 followers, like we can go at it.
Well, that's the thing too. I always tell people, you can have whatever opinion you want. You just got to stand. You got to stand on it. You got to stand behind it. If you can't stand behind it, which happens a lot when you choose to engage people because they don't think you're going to respond back. And then you do, and you're like, well, what about this? And then they go like,
right. You know, it's hard. I told one of my teens the other day, I said, bro, you got to stop talking to people who ain't on your level. And it's like, it kind of hit me like, yo, dog, you got to stop talking to people who ain't on your level. But again, the educator in me, you know, wants to pour into these people, you know, and again, it's just I'm always going to challenge somebody, not saying my way is right. Like I'm like the church. You ain't got to come join my church, but you need to be up under somebody. You know what I mean? Like you need to get some type of OG in this hip hop game. So when you read a book, like I always tell people, if I watch the Temptation movie, I call my mom and I ask questions. I don't call her like grilling her like, yo, did you know Otis and did you know this and like it's like no, read the book and then go talk to somebody who experienced that music. Because that's the thing. We could all go back and listen to music, and I can listen to Marvin Gaye, what's going on a million times, but I didn't.
Right, but what's the context of it?
Right, you know, our parents experienced that, and there's a difference between listening to music and experiencing the music. So it's like that's great. I applaud anybody who goes back and listens to Run DMC's first album, but now get with somebody who was there and then learn even more. Talk about the experience of it, because you're not going to get that from a book, or you're not going to get that from listening to the album. You got to get that from somebody who was there. So it's like a tier process, which I'm trying to teach people. It's like listen to the music, maybe read up on it, but then ask somebody who was there about it, and then you can get that full 3-level, you know what I mean, feel of the album then. So yeah.
Well, it's also who's curating the history, and this is a bigger conversation, but what the hell, let's get into it. Like, I always think back to in the early to mid 2000s, there was this big wave on cable TV where, especially on channels like VH1 and a lot of the like cultural history channels, when they would try and get into pop culture, you would see people try and like tell the story of certain genres, and they absolutely tried to do that with rap and hip hop, where it's like, here's the story. And it's like, no, this is like a part of the story, but you're not getting everything. Like they would, like coming from New York City, being the guy who do the wrestling podcast with Familia, he's a huge hip hop head, and we always talk all the time. We interviewed Ralph McDaniels once, and Ralph McDaniels, you bet. And we were like so nervous. Like we talked to like big wrestlers that we love and stuff before, but like Ralph McDaniels got us like the most nervous because we're like, fucking Ralph McDaniels.
This is the legend right here, man. This is the man behind the whole camera from day one.
But for a guy who was there, who was like talking to MTV back in the day, trying to tell them like, here's what's going on, here's where it's at, he was kind of like completely left out of the history that they were telling at that time.
Yeah.
So it's like, who are the gatekeepers? Like that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I always tell people, if you're doing anything type of hip hop, podcast, website, whatever you're doing, magazine, and you don't have somebody who's at least 47 or older on your squad, like you're losing. Like we talk about sports. When you look at the people, and definitely respect and prayers to all the people who lost their gig over at ESPN recently. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the on-air personalities, they're either one or two things. They're all over 40, or they played the game. You know what I mean? You're not going to find too many people who are 23 years old as an on-air talent on any type of sports show, because you've got to be able to talk intelligently at least about the past 2 decades. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You
can't be up there as 23 and never saw Jordan play live. And the only thing you know about Jordan is YouTube clips or Come Fly With Me or with your cousins and them saw. You got to be able to speak about that intelligently, and you're only going to be able to do that at a certain age. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's the problem. I always give the analogy back. I'm from Philly. In the hood mall I used to work at, Cheltenham Mall, from 10 to 4, that was the family time. That's when the moms and the dads and your little sisters would come out. And then around 5 to 7, okay, to 11 and 12, the middle schoolers start coming out. By 8 o'clock, the real dudes come out. And nobody was ever in the mall at the same time. You understood, okay, it's 8 o'clock, it's time for me to go home because the real dudes is coming out. I ain't trying to get robbed. I ain't trying to get beat up. The problem with social media is we all in the mall at the same time. We all in the same, we're all in Twitter at the same time. I've come across talking to people, arguing with people, and I'm like, dog, you're 24. You literally could be my child. Like, I could be your father. Like, why am I arguing with somebody who is old enough to be my child? Like, bro, it's okay to just sit back and listen. When I was young, if the old heads even let me hang around them, dog, I just was quiet. I didn't say anything. I listened, and I was just grateful to be in the room. Whereas now with social media, there is no grateful to be in the room. It's like, I'm in the room, and I know just as much as you. I read such and such book, and I did this, and you know what I mean. So
well, that goes back to like the whole like the ring chasing arguments and the who's in your top 10 arguments, and like that stuff can be fun conversation if you're willing to accept that that's a very subjective question.
Right.
But a lot of people don't want it to be subjective. They want to say like, no, this person is number one. This person. That's why like I kind of like I've said this before on the pod. I don't really subscribe to. I think there's like, for the sake of argument, a Hall of Fame, and there's like a VIP section. And there are certain people who are in like the GOAT room of the VIP section for different reasons. Like Jordan's in there, Kareem's in there, Bill Russell's in there for the amount of rings and what he did to revolutionize defense. LeBron's in there because we've never seen like such a physical like athlete of his type play as long as he's been playing now, and like at the level that he's been playing. Because there's like a million ways to skin a cat. Like people are saying that right now Steph Curry's the best player of all time. Steph Curry's amazing. You could say he's a top 10 player, but like you got to know that he's not the GOAT.
Right. And I mean, I think the hard part too is like, especially with the NBA, because it's been around for 75 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like somebody asked me about my Mount Rushmore. I feel like I really can't have one because I wasn't there to see Oscar Robertson play, and I don't ever want to leave anybody out. You know what I mean? So I feel like with the NBA, and it's coming the same thing with hip hop, like maybe we just got to do eras, like 80s to 2000. Who's on that Mount Rushmore? And because truth be told, I'm not going to sit here, and again, this is the difference about me and a lot of people on Twitter. I don't like speaking and then not being intelligent. Most people on Twitter don't care if it's intelligent. I'm gonna just tell you how I feel. I can sound dumb. I can't intelligently say. From what I hear about Oscar Robertson, he sounds like he's a go play, but I never saw him.
But not to cut you off, but that's a very key part of it too, is that you brought up a good thing where we should define people more by their contemporaries, by their era, because you will leave people out. I talk about specifically when you think about like the 90s, you would put Penny Hardaway on that list, but you wouldn't put Penny in the Hall of Fame. Because his career wouldn't warrant it. So if you're talking about an overall conversation, you would maybe like sweep Penny under the rug. But if we're talking about like who was the best in the 90s at that time, you can't leave Penny out of that conversation.
Not at all. And I mean, I think that's something that, and you'll definitely understand this through wrestling. We did an ep of Apartment 5B. Just like back in the day in the 80s, I was a huge wrestling fan. It was like the TV title, the Intercontinental title. So we just did an episode on like, who has the dopest voice in hip hop? Who's the dopest storyteller? Who's the dopest, person to set off around? Just because when we talk about these GOAT arguments 24/7, so many MCs are never going to get named. We're never going to talk about Sadat X, who may have the greatest voice in hip hop. You're not going to talk about a Black Thought who may be the illest freestyle. Well, now after the Funk Flex thing, now Black Thought is being talked about. But for all those
even
years,
people like people talking about Jadakiss the past couple of years because of the Versus thing. But again, he might get swept under the rug in certain conversations because he doesn't have that like consistent run of consistent albums.
Right. So to me, it's just about giving everybody their love. Imagine if all they had in wrestling was just the world title, and that's it. There's no TV title. There's no Intercontinental title. There's no TV title. Like, it just, so again, I just do it because I want it's all these other MCs who need to get appreciated and loved and get their flowers. But if you're not in that GOAT conversation, it's almost just like, then you don't exist. And that's what I don't like about the game now. Like, one of my young boys was like, yo, OG, if you don't give it 5 mics, then you might as well call it trash. Because I'm like, that album is good, but it ain't a classic. And then everybody's just like, oh, so you don't like it? It's like, no, I do like it. Like, it's a good album. Like, and he had to school me like, nah, bro, if you don't say it's the greatest thing ever, then you're just basically calling it trash. And that's the problem. It happened yesterday. Somebody was talking about the Brat, and they was like, oh, Brat's one of the most legendary MCs ever. I'm like, bro, I don't know what planet you're from. The Brat is not one of the most legendary MCs ever. And then it's all, oh, you don't like the Brat? I think the Brat is incredible. I just don't think she's a legendary MC. Yeah. So it's like, that's the thing. If you don't say she's legendary, then that means you don't like her. And that's the problem when having these conversations on Twitter, that it's like, no, I think there was a time when a Brat 16 was crazy. You know what I mean? I can talk about plenty of times that but she's just not legendary. And that's okay, because everybody can't make the Hall of Fame. It's not special if everybody makes it.
Right, it's not the Hall of Very Good. It's the Hall of Fame.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's the thing with Twitter, but I love it because a lot of times, prayerfully, people do be like, oh, I didn't know that. Or even with Apartment 5B, the whole goal is just, I want somebody to watch an episode and learn something. That's always been my thing. That's always been my pet peeve. If I read a magazine back in the day, I want to learn something. Time is a commodity, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. So that's why I've set Apartment 5B up to be like a university of hip hop. Like, you are going to walk away learning something. I know a lot of shit about hip hop, and every week I learn something from somebody who's on the panel. So that's really the goal of that show, is to teach and is to kind of help people, either if you're older, reminisce, and if you're younger, learn some things.
Yeah, and it's a good segue. Speaking of learning some things, I want to segue right now into schooling some people on 90s NBA. A lot of people's favorite era, and this man, during this era, breaking the backboards, Shaquille O'Neal out of LSU, first season Rookie of the Year, obviously, 93. How big was his impact when he first came into the league? Because again, I started out the episode mentioning that there may be people younger who, I mean, look, we remember, like, people in my generation look at John Madden as the guy from the video games.
Right.
Like, they don't think him as the coach. So a lot of people may think of Shaq as just like the funny guy on TNT who yells at Chuck.
Right.
And they don't realize that, like, when he came in the league, he didn't even look like Shaquille O'Neal that was on the Lakers. He looked like a gazelle. He was lanky and like he could do a lot more. But like,
it's funny you say that because with the teen centers I run, you ask my teens about Eddie Murphy, they think Donkey from Shrek.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Or you say Ice Cube to them and they're like, are we there yet? Like when Straight Outta Compton, the movie came out, my kids came up, it's like, Mr. Kill, Ice Cube was a gangster rapper? I'm like, yeah, because all they know him from is, are we there yet? In barbershop and stuff like that. But
I think people, LL Cool J, people think about him as like an actor. They hear like, Accidental Racist or whatever that song was, and they're like, oh, this guy's kind of corny. It's like he knocked the door down for a lot of people.
Yeah. But I mean, I think you said it best, bro. He was breaking backboards, plural. Yeah. Like this wasn't a one-stop shop. Like this, there were multiple ones. I mean, Shaq was like, Shaq to me reminded me of like when Nas came in with hip hop. It was something that we really hadn't seen before or heard before. And to me, what many people call, I mean, I don't agree because I'm just older, but a lot of people younger call Illmatic the hip hop Bible. You know what I mean? And I felt like Shaq was really like something we had never saw before. I didn't witness Dow Dawkins like literally breaking the glass in the backboards. Of course, I've seen the clips of it, but to literally see Shaq bring down the whole joint and then have to pause the game and stop and do all of this. It's just like, yo, this dude is like a monster out here. You know what I mean? So it was something that we had never, well, at least for me, being 49 at that time, that I had never seen before. You know what I'm saying? And somebody who was just like a force of nature. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And to fast forward a little bit to the present day, well, first, before we even get there,
These two
Shaq and
right
Penny,
there, man.
come on,
Bro.
like before we even jump an inch further, these guys again talking about, like, you know, you can't write the book of the NBA in the '90s without Penny Hardaway.
Nah. I mean, to me, this is like, and you know me, it's the hip hop in me. Everything is always going back. This is like the EPMD of the NBA in the '90s. You know what I mean? It's like you watch the 30 for 30s, and it's just like the same way when we had all our favorite rap groups from the '90s breaking up, Brand Nubians, EPMD, all these groups breaking up, Main Source. You know, it's kind of like you just wish you had that person who could have been there to kind of like mediate it, you know, and just stay together, because no matter what these groups did separately, we always wanted them back together. I don't care what Jamal and Sadat did and what Puba did, I wanted them back together. I didn't care what, you know what I mean, Eric did and Parrish did, we wanted them back together. If we could have just kept these two together, man, you know what I mean? It's just...
Well, it's like the first year they're together, it's like, you make it to the finals? Like, how far could they have... Like, that's always going to be the question. How far could they have gotten? But then, you know, hindsight's 2020. You look at Penny and what happened to his knees and his legs, and it's like, you know, Shaq wasn't necessarily wrong. And look, we can cry foul all we want. The real bad guys in this are the Orlando Magic, who didn't want to pay him.
Who didn't want to pay him, right? Who did not want to pay him.
Or Alonzo Mourning was getting all that money.
Right, because if Shaq was ready to resign and then Zoe signed and was like, oh, nah. If Zoe got that, then I got to get this. You know what I mean? So, like you said, they're the bad guys. It's just, and then I mean, those Eagles at the time, you know what I mean? They're young. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing that a lot of times folk forget. These are kids, man. These are kids. Yeah, they're millionaires, but they're still millionaire kids. They would have been in college still. You know what I mean? So, and it's hard to curve it. One of my favorite Ye lines: it's hard to be humble when you stunting on a jumbotron. You know what I mean? It's hard to be humble when Penny has the little Penny commercials and he's blowing up, and you got the foam sneakers, and Shaq is like, wait a second, no, I'm Shaq Diesel and I got this album and I got the commercials and everything like that. And you just put them two Eagles together. And it's sad that we can't see, you know, it pan out. But I mean, we saw the same with Kobe and Shaq. You know what I mean? Yeah. So even sometimes, even as you do mature, a lot of times you don't get to see it until, like you said, it's hindsight and it's years later. And it's like, you know, then you're sitting down talking to each other like, yeah, I made some mistakes. You made some mistakes. But these two right here, man, there was a time Penny Hardaway was easily my top favorite player in the NBA because the stuff he could do. He still got this one move I've never seen anybody else do. Like,
is it the like step back or he like steps back?
Right, it's like that step
and
back
then does
dribble.
it like to the side.
Right. It's like, I mean, he could do it all. Like, he could pass, he could dunk, he could shoot. He's 6'9". Like, you know, it was like we had never seen anything like that. I don't think we've seen anything like that since. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he could do it all, man. He could do it all.
He could do it all, and the way they broke up was wild. I don't think people remember exactly how it happened because it was when they were at the Olympics in Athens. There was a press conference. I don't know if it was right before but it was like the entire Olympic team was like there watching it. And like you could look on like the look on Penny's face, he's like seething. He's like, really? You're gonna do this now.
Right.
And you're gonna go to the Lakers, you're gonna break this thing up. And he has the famous quote, I don't know if you've ever heard it, where he goes, Kobe got what I deserved. And it's like that tells you everything you need to know about how Penny feels about the situation.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like that. Most people don't remember Leaders of the New School literally broke up on Yo MTV Raps, like when Fab Five Freddy was interviewing them. Like, bro, y'all really breaking up on live TV right now, you know? But yeah, I mean, it's just, again, you know, egos and like you said, Orlando not wanting to pay them and again, not knowing what was eventually going to come, you know, with Penny's knees and just the way that his career panned out. I mean, I think about how many people from Grant Hill to Jamal Mashburn to, you know, Penny Hardaway, whose careers could have just been Hall. I mean, Grant, I think is still going to get in the Hall, but, you know, a lot of players who could have gotten into the Hall and had, you know, stellar careers, the injury bug just hit them and hit them hard too.
Yeah, and again, just to fast forward a little bit to the modern day and just talk about the idea of just NBA rappers in general. Like, we're going to go back to Shaq, but there really hasn't been anyone since, and you would be the guy who would know. Like, has there been anyone that has even come close to the amount of success that Shaq had as an artist? Obviously, if you watch it on YouTube, you see Damian Lillard on the screen, Dame Dollar. He's probably the most well-known from this era, but even that is more just because of the times we live in. You can get a lot of traction on social media. They'll put some of his tracks in the 2K games, but like I wouldn't say he's not selling albums. He's not moving merch the way that Shaq did.
Yeah, nah. I mean, I think the big thing with I think Fame from MOP said it both best. He said something like rappers want to be actors and actors want to be ball players. Like everybody wants to do what the other person does. And the 90s was like that time for it. You had AI, with his joint. Kobe with album had an album that was never released. So you're absolutely right. Dame is the closest thing to it. But I think somewhere along the way, like being a rapper kind of got played out. And I don't know if it necessarily got played out. I don't know if after AI, maybe David Stern kind of came in and said something behind the scenes, like, because here's the thing. I'm sure, trust me, there are more rappers now than it was in the 90s. So I know there are people who rap in the NBA. So the fact that they're not putting out music themselves, like, to me, tells me that there must be something buried in the NBA contract or something like that. Like, you can't do this, because I don't understand. Now with Bandcamp and Apple Music and all that stuff and DistroKid, you can release your own music.
Right. There should be more people. Like, you would think we would see them.
Exactly. And the fact that there isn't, to me, tells me that somehow, some way, buried in that NBA jargon is like, yo, don't rap. like, don't, So I don't know if Dame is just like, screw it, I don't care, I'm going to do it. But here's the funny thing. I've never heard a Dame record. I've never heard a Dame song. As much as I'm on Twitter and people love to be able to school me to something, I've never had. I always tell people with so much music, if it's dope enough, it'll find its way to me. If something is dope enough people will tell me about. I have never heard a Dame Lillard song. I can only speak from a standpoint of people say he's nice, but I've never heard that song. So any of his songs. So again, I don't know if it's one of those things where it's like, hey, you can make an album, but you can't promote it. There has to be something in that NBA contract that says, because this dude is, these dudes have money for years. So he could easily just be like, yo, I'm gonna take $1 million and just promote the hell out of my album. I'm gonna be on every radio station. I'm gonna be on every TV show. And the fact that his music is almost nowhere to be found, I gotta believe that there's something in the league that they just won't let these dudes rap anymore. It's almost like how Iverson changed the game, and now you got to wear suits. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to do this, and Jay Williams with the motorcycle. Like, okay, nope, you did that.
No motorcycles in the contract.
I feel like the NBA is constantly pivoting to whatever these people are doing that could hurt the brand. So especially now with so much coke rap, you can't tell me half these dudes wouldn't want to be in the studio with Benny the Butcher or Pusha T. Talking about I got a key on the table, or I'm in the kitchen cooking up some crack. Like, nah, bro, y'all can't do none of that. So, but to answer your question, it's just Dame. Like, Dame is the lone one left, bro.
Yeah, and now going back in time, going back to the 90s, this man, Mr. Shaq Siesel, at a certain point, pretty quickly too. It wasn't like, he came in the league and then, around 95, 96, he got a bug up his ass. It was like, I want to start a rap career. This was like right away. Right. He got in with Fushnikins and was like, you guys are going to be basically my crew, my backing group, and we're going to work together on an album. And that album became this little ditty right here with Shaq Siesel.
Right.
And if you want to listen to it, definitely stop the podcast right now and go find it on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get music. It's all over the place. It's not like they're hiding it. And the rap on this album had always been, it's Shaq's album. Like, it's not really that good. And in the past couple of years, like you've heard this sort of growing reputation of it. And it's like, is the reputation because it's better than expected, or is it legitimately good? Is it a hidden gem? Does it get by just on the fact that, you know, he got people like Fife on the album? Like, what is the deal with the Shaq Diesel? Because again, went platinum. Only NBA star to go platinum. What are your thoughts on the Shaq Diesel album to finally get to the meat and potatoes of it?
I mean, you gotta understand this joint came out in '93, so I am 19. I'm at Morgan State. I'm hosting our underground hip hop show, Strictly Hip Hop, up at 889, which for people watching is similar to I mirrored the show after Stretch and Bobbito up at 89.9 Tech 9 up in New York. So we were all underground. Everything was underground, you know, like on some EPMD. I'm strictly underground. I stick to Kid Capri. So I'm not gonna hold you. When this joint came out, we listened because of the production. You know, Eric Sermon.
The production is very good.
You know, Ali Shaheed did some joints. Def Jeff did some joints. You know what I mean? So the joint was, production-wise, it was good. I looked at Shaq like, I didn't feel like Shaq had bars. Like, Shaq was cool. But again, what I've learned on Twitter is everything is different. Because for the person, I'm 19, for the person who was 9, this shit was probably right up their alley. You know what I mean? So again, it's always about, that's why I always try to preface things that I say with where I was, with age I was, and the mindset that I was in. And I mean, in keeping it about too, it's Shaq. So it was a money grab. Job is like, yo, Shaq wants to rhyme. Oh shit, he's the biggest star in the world. Sign him. Like, sign him right now. Because if he's not Shaq, if he's not Shaquille O'Neal, and he's just Shaquille Jackson from Southside Jamaica, Queens, he's not getting no deal with Jive. He's not getting in the studio with Eric Sermon. He's not getting in the studio with Ali Shaheed Muhammad from Tribe. He's not getting Fife as a feature. You know, these things all came to him because this was Shaq. So who wouldn't want to work with Shaq? In '93, if I was producing and somebody said, Kill, you want to sell a beat to Shaq? Fuck yeah, I want to sell a beat to Shaq. Like, we're going to sell 1 million copies. Like, yeah, like, I'm sure the Foosh niggas are still eating to this day if their paperwork is right off of What's Up Doc. You know what I mean? Like, so again, and I think it was also the time that people loved Shaq. Like, this is something that I can say, and prayerfully I'm not belaboring this answer, but Gangstar came out and took some of the radio DJs out to dinner one time, and I asked Guru, God bless the dead, like, yo, you did this song with, like, you know, KC and JoJo royalty, like, dog, like, it's a little sellout, don't you think? Like, you got JoJo and Casey on here singing a hook, and he was like, yo, we fuck with them dudes. They get high, we get high, they get drunk, we get drunk, they cool as shit. We just wanted to work with them. Like, it's not, everything doesn't have to be about selling out, you know? And that kind of just stuck in my head, like, yo, like, maybe there are times that the label doesn't force things together. Like, you're always like, oh, that person got such and such singing, oh, the label must. Maybe they just like Mary J. Blige and they always wanted to do a song with Mary. Like, so I think the thing too about hip hop and basketball right now is that we fucked with them and they fucked with us. You know what I mean? So it may not have just been a money grab. It may have been like, yo, I love Shaq. Like, that's my favorite player. Of course I want to work with Shaq. You know what I mean? So I think now being a more mature 49-year-old, I definitely can appreciate this album more than what I could have appreciated when I was 19, and it was like, oh, this dude, like, because it's 93, I'm comparing this dude to Buckshot Shorty now. You know, I'm comparing him to Black Moon, I'm comparing him to Wu-Tang, I'm comparing him to Tribe Called Quest, and it's like, nah, bro, you're not on the same level. But at the end of the day, like I said, looking back at it now, it's like, yo, the because I listened to this like recently just from when you hit me up, and I was just like, yo, these beats, like, I remember hearing these joints. Like, I remember I remember where you're at, and I remember I'm outstanding. It was like, yo, I remember these joints.
Smart people know to put other smart people around them.
Right. You know, so Shaq did what he had to do, and I think the thing about it was just everything in life to me is timing. And when you look at that 92, 93, hip hop and the NBA was so connected. You know what I mean? Like, it was just this link that I don't feel like is really there anymore. You know what I mean? You had, you know, Fife of all people. Fife always was talking about sports in his rhymes. You know what I mean? So again, I don't feel like it was forced. I mean, they're both on jobs, so that's Tribe's label, but I'm sure Fife wanted to rock with Shaq. You know what I mean? Because I think the beautiful thing is we were fans of each other at that time. You know, so I mean, I thought it was. I mean, like I said, looking back at it, it's definitely not as bad as what I thought at the time because just where my mindset was at the time. But what about you? What'd you think about the joint when it dropped?
I thought it was when it dropped. I was a little too young, but I remember picking it up a couple of years after the fact, and I really liked the production on it, especially on a track like "I'm Outstanding." Like that, like there's
it's funny because I got an asterisk next to Outstanding. I'm like, this joint could have been for Redman, you know, from even the piece he uses from Blow Your Mind on I'm Outstanding.
Well, that's the other sort of key to this entire album is in huge chunks of this album. There's actually very little Shaq,
right?
Like even on some of the singles, like he kind of just like sneaks in at the end.
Right.
And it's like, he's on there he is. Here's Shaq. It's his track now. And I think that does a lot to like mask any shortcomings he has. It's like you said, he doesn't really have any bars, but maybe like the couple bars he does have, it's like, okay, we'll cut everything, give me those bars, and we'll just plug them in to this 20 seconds here, and we'll make people think he's got something.
Right. And I mean, I think the other thing too at the end of the day, and this is just being older and be able to look at it, bro, if you have the opportunity to live out your dreams, live out your dreams. Do it. Like that, just dead ass. You know, like it's like, yo, if you have the opportunity, because people would get on Shaq because like, he's a rapper, he's an actor, he's just why not? Fun. He's a big kid. Like, why not? You know,
if if the big company comes to you and says, you know what, we're gonna give you $4 million to make a movie where you dress up as a genie. Why not?
Especially if that's something that you want to do. You know, now again, at the time, and this is why I'm just talking about maturity. Again, at the time, it's like, look at this nigga, a fucking genie. You know what I mean? Because of just where my mentality was at. I'm still in the hood. But now as I'm older, it's like, dog, if that was a role you wanted to take that role. Like, again, it's like my mentality has just shifted so much from 93 to 2023, which prayerfully it would for anybody. You know?
Right. But, it's the idea of selling out, I think, has changed as well. I think if you talk to this is something where it's like, I think this generation is more hip to the idea of knowing what's behind the curtain.
Right.
And knowing that selling out truly means compromising who you are, compromising your integrity. It doesn't mean, I heard your song on a car commercial, therefore you sold out. It's like, well, did you make that song with the intent of it getting on a car commercial? Because if you did, okay, then we can have that conversation about you selling out. Like if you wrote a whole song about a Honda Accord, okay, maybe you were just trying to get a lot of money. But if they took it, 10 years after the fact and want to pay, they're going to get music anyway for that commercial. Right. So, why not have it be yours? Right.
And the thing, too, about Shaq looking back at it, he actually loved hip-hop. Right. And again, as a 49-year-old, I can't be mad at that. I can't be mad at the fact that you love something so much that you wanted to be part of it. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like now you have a lot of people who I was just saying this on Twitter today. I think at least 30 to 40% of the league don't even love basketball. It's just the money. And my man Mills said this to me once. He said, Kil, if an 8th grader walks in your teen center and this dude is 6'9", what are you going to expect he do? I'm just play ball. What if this kid tells you, nah, I don't want to play ball. I don't like basketball. I just like singing on the choir at church. You know what? The hood and the family and everybody who meets him, they're going to make him play basketball.
Make him play basketball.
Because of the payoff that can come. So you have all these guys that are in the league who really don't even love the sport. They love what the sport can give to them. They love the money it brings to them. They love the attention, but they don't love the actual sport of it. And it's the same with hip hop. You have the same people saying, man, Lil Uzi Vert could make that much money. I could rhyme like that. And you have all these people. When I got my 2 turntables in 84, all I wanted to do was be the dopest DJ in my part of Philly. That's all I wanted. I wasn't going into this thinking, okay, I can make X amount of dollars if I do X amount of parties and I charge it. It wasn't even about money. It was just about the respect. The same way I'm sure playing ball was back in the 80s. Of course people wanted to get to the league, but I think more important was just like, yo, I just want to be great. Whereas now we're living in a generation where money is just so overflowing. So you got people who don't even love hip hop who are rapping. You got people who don't even love NBA who are playing. And so I have to give Shaq credit for just actually, there's no way in my soul that I can believe Shaq didn't love hip hop and didn't want to be part of this culture. He wasn't looking at it like, oh, I'm gonna go over here and rap so I can get another check. I don't believe that. I believe it was, I want to go over here and rap because I genuinely enjoy rapping. Like, and I can't be mad at that. I can't, you know what I mean? I really can't be mad at that.
Yeah, and there's too many metrics to worry about now as well. It's not just about, okay, we found someone who we feel we can put on our label, market accordingly, you know, find a single, do all that. Now it's how many followers do they have?
Right.
You know, what can we do on social media with them? Like, are they putting up content consistently? Like, what are they doing? Short form videos, long, like it's a whole big thing where like now, like people coming up now need to know how to market themselves. And then even if they know how to market themselves, you know, something will come along 5 years from now that we're not even thinking of.
Right.
That they're going to have to pay attention to again and sort of reset the whole table.
Right. Nah, you're 100% right, man. So it's funny. Will Smith had done an album. I forgot what the name. I think it was Lost and Found. But something that he intrigued me is he said he took a year off of acting to create this album. And I mean, the album was whack. But
right.
I at least respected him for saying, like, yo, you respect hip hop enough to say, yo, let me take a year off of acting so I can just put my all into making this album. And again, I respect the fact that you respect the culture and the skill set that much to do that, because Will Smith turning down 2 movies in a year is basically saying no to $40 million.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
and he's another guy that, you know, people think of him as an actor now. They think of him as a family actor,
right?
You know, all the Men in Black movies and all this. And then, you know, there's a whole generation that didn't grow up with him as the Fresh Prince, didn't grow up with him, you know, in the late 80s doing raps for, you know, one of the first major artists for like teenagers coming up to really gravitate to.
Right. So, I mean, again, you know, I just respect the fact that Shaq really loved hip hop. He really loved these MCs he was working with. He was really a fan of Big, really a fan of Foosh, really a fan of these people. So, I mean, I appreciate him for that too.
Well, that's him with Big right there. He showed up on the what was that third album? The Rain.
Can't Stop the Rain.
The Rain.
Which Big blacked out on that verse too. That's a nice Big gem right there that people don't talk about. That beat was crazy. Big was crazy. Again, Shaq was Shaq, but you know what I mean. Again, man, everybody.
But not to cut you off. But again, going back to what you were saying before, like Shaq just wanted to have fun. Let's not forget, around the same time, both him and Big were on that Michael Jackson album.
Right.
Like what NBA player gets to say that? Like, oh, I had a platinum album and was hanging out with Michael Jackson on his album.
Right. And I think that's the thing that we, like you said, we all have to remember. He was just having fun, man. You know what I'm saying? And he had the opportunity where he could just have fun because this wasn't his livelihood. You know what I'm saying? A lot of real rappers who like, they got to do the marketing, they got to do the promotion, they got to do all this because this is how they eat. You know, for Shaq, it was just like, nah, this is just something I love doing. It's, you know, it's the dude who loves hooping just at his 40 and over rec league. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not taking this. Like, dog, we ain't about to rumble over no game. I'm just trying to stay in shape and just have fun, bro. Like, you know what I mean? So I definitely, like I said, man, looking back at it, I definitely appreciate this. I don't remember this. I've never seen
You've never seen Shaq Fu?
I've never seen this, bro.
Oh, were you not a video game person in the 90s?
Yeah, but I mean, again, at Morgan, like all we played was like Madden and I guess at that time NBA Live was it wasn't even NBA Live in 93. I don't even know what it was, but it was mad. Oh, we just played football and basketball. I never saw this joint.
Yeah, no, he had a fighting game called Shaq Fu.
Wow.
It was on all the consoles, and I don't know why I grabbed the Game Gear version. If you're playing, let me tell you something. If you're grabbing 15 batteries to load up on a Game Gear and play Shaq Fu, you are a sick individual. You are down bad for whatever video games you can get.
How was this joint?
This sucked. It was terrible. Oh. It's like a notoriously bad game.
This shit was horrible.
It's right up there. Like, this could be a whole episode in and of itself, because he had a game And then Michael Jordan had a game that wasn't a basketball game. It was Michael Jordan Chaos in the Windy City, where you're running around throwing like flaming basketballs at people and like ice basketballs at people.
Yo, that's crazy.
Charles Barkley did have his own game called Barkley Shut Up and Jam, which was like a 16-bit like NBA Street kind of game.
Okay.
And that's why you don't see him in a lot of the basketball games, because he kept his own rights, because he's like, no, I can make more money putting out my own game than just licensing myself to like EA or whatever.
Yo,
but yeah, Shaq Fu, this was certainly a game.
Shaq style. Wow.
Yeah, this certainly existed.
That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. You take it. Yeah, this is wild to me. I did not know about this, Sean.
But I think that's a good place to end on.
Yeah.
Good place as any.
I'm just still stuck. I'm like looking like, yo, this is crazy. Now I gotta Google this shit, man.
Yeah, you gotta when you go home later.
Yo, it's crazy. It's crazy. That's what's up, though.
But yeah, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, definitely. Kil889 Twitter. Kil889 Twitter, IG. We'll make beats for food. We got Apartment 5B every Monday. New ep up every Monday. The episode that's up right now is our What's Your Top 5 album so far of 2023. We're at that halfway midpoint of the 50th year of hip hop. So, looking at what albums have dropped so far. Also started a new show with my brothers Gadget and Rel called Illadelph Steak Life, which is about 3 Philly boys going around to any and everywhere that claim they got dope cheesesteaks, and we are breaking it down the same exact way that we break down hip hop. So it's not like I just don't like this. Now we're explaining to you what makes a good steak, what is a legitimate, authentic Philly cheesesteak. And again, we just going around. So the first ep is up again. You can get it at willmakebeatsforfood.com. But again, bro, I just appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you. I truly appreciate it, man.
Yeah, and the cheesesteak, I like the cheesesteak clips you've been putting up, because again, it's very easy to put something up and be like, yeah, like there's a million clips on YouTube of people reviewing food where it's like, oh, this is good. Okay, see ya. And like that's it. Like you guys actually get into, like you said, like what makes a good cheesesteak. Like, how's the meat? Pause. Like, do you want it with whiz, without whiz? Right.
And again, that's like, I always try to, I never want to do something that's already being done. So even when I would be looking at spots, it was always out of towners coming to Philly, talking about, yo, I got cheesesteak. And one dude was like, I don't even know how to rate this or whatever. And it's just like, okay, so there's a lane. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then on top of that, again, it's like 3 Philly people. Like, we're explaining to you why Philly culture is so deep with the cheesesteak. And I'm glad to say the spot we went to, this new ep, we just recorded new ep Saturday, was incredible. So I was scared to go 0-2 because I'm like, I didn't want people to be thinking, oh, they are just going to be rating cheesesteaks 0 mics because it ain't from Philly. But now we found this spot out here in Maryland that'll be up on the new ep that was actually 5 mics. Actually, to me, was just as good as a Philly cheesesteak. So, yeah, so.
Well, there you go. We'll go check that out.
Yeah. So I appreciate you again, brother. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on, man.
No, thank you for taking the time out. And with all that said, go subscribe over on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts from. Go subscribe on the YouTube if you're only listening on the podcast side of things. YouTube.com/@Oddball Podcast. There's a lot more videos up there that I've been posting the past month, so go ahead, support that. It's free. I don't do a Patreon. I don't do any of that BS. Just go subscribe. Once again, youtube.com/@Oddball Podcast. So with all that said, I'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Again, you can follow me on social media at Mighty Vin and at Oddball Podcast, at Vin Forte NYC over on Instagram. With all that said, I'll see you next week.